Hello everyone. So I talked to my friend last night and we had a pretty long discussion on our experience with our characters in Diablo 4's current endgame. And today I'm gonna talk about a few things we both agree that are very problematic and why that makes us feel playing the endgame is just not fun. My friend play as sorceress and druid. I play as rogue. And some of these are from his perspective and some are from my perspective. But we both understand each other and we agree on pretty much everything we discuss. So this one is from my friend since he plays sorceress and druid. He feels that most builds are way too heavily rely on lucky hits and critical strikes to work. Either it's to heal or to trigger legendary powers, but mainly is to regenerate resource so you can keep on casting your core skills to have damage output. Therefore, most builds need high monster density to work, or at least will function a lot better with high monster density. Because the more monsters there are, the more critical strikes and lucky hit will proc. But the problem is that most areas in the game just don't have enough. Either it's Nightmare Dungeon or Hell Ties, there's just not enough monster density. Most of the time, you have to look for things to kill. You spend more time running around than actually killing stuff. Even for most events, they make 4 monsters spawn, you have to kill them all, and then the next 4 monsters spawn, you kill them all again, then the next 5 spawn, and it repeats and repeats. And we're like, can you just make all of them all spawn at once? Let's stop wasting time. Most builds are just way too heavily rely on critical strikes and lucky hits proc to work, which heavily rely on high monster density to have enough proc. This is why dungeons like Champion's Demise and Blind Burrows are S tier nightmare dungeons, because they have high monster density. Critical strikes and lucky hits proc all the time. Therefore, most builds have no problem working in here. With low monster density, most builds will basically just depend on how lucky you are. If you're lucky, critical strikes and lucky hit proc, your build work. If you're unlucky, they don't proc, your build won't work. Because of this, you got this weird situation that the game is actually easier with more monsters, and it's actually harder or unplayable for some builds with less monsters. It doesn't really feel right. In D2, we do have a skill called Lightning Fury, which the more monsters there are, the more powerful it becomes. But it's not like with low monster density, the Javasan build won't work. Nothing like that. In D4, the build will just not work. And that's not what we want. We want something always work, not based on luck to work. On top of that, some nightmare dungeons have this affix that the monsters can drain your resource, and your resource will constantly being drained to zero, completely empty. My rogue has very fast attack speed, faster than most other builds out there. And my energy is still constantly being drained to zero. In D4, resource is only 100 max by default. Maybe with some items you have a bit more, but it's still a very small and limited amount, and you don't have mana potions like in D2. So with basic skills deals very tiny to no damage in the late game, there's just nothing you can do. The main indication that a build is even working is that you can keep the resource up. Otherwise, you have no damage output because you have no resource to cast your core skills. So why on earth put this affix in the game that constantly make your resources empty when it's already really difficult to keep that up in the first place? This affix that makes your resource constantly being drained to zero, it needs to go. If you run into a nightmare dungeon that has this affix, you basically have to give up, because there's just nothing you can do. Unless you have the patience to just use your basic skill, or wait for your ultimate skill cooldown every minute to do some damage, which will take forever, and that's just simply not fun. Also, in Nightmare Dungeons, there are just way too many CC. There are just way too many explosions on death. You constantly get one shot by distant enemy from off screen. And the elite monster affixes and Nightmare Dungeon affixes are just super annoying. I play as Rogue, and I use penetrating shot and rapid fire as my core skills for damage output. And the elite's shield or barrier, whatever you want to call it, that completely immune to all range attack, is like the most annoying thing ever. It basically forces all range builds to go melee. One time I ran into 4 elites. They all have that shield. On top of that, they are all cold enchanted. That means if I attack them in melee range, I'll be frozen. So they have this cold enchanted affix, which tells me I should stay away from them and attack them from a distance. But at the same time, they got 4 of these shields overlapping each other, which tells me I need to get into melee range, like touching them that close, or I won't be able to deal any form of damage whatsoever. So what exactly am I supposed to do? I guess the best option is to play as a barbarian, so I have unstoppable all the time, so I don't have to worry about it. And what's the point of having ranged skills in the game when the game basically forces you to get into melee range all the time? Melee passive like Sturdy and Siphoning Strikes should not feel mandatory to have if you just want to play a pure range rogue. I think it's more fun if the game let me to be in range all the time, if my skill is good enough to keep me at a distance from monsters, instead of forcing me to be melee all the time even if I want to play range. We think for some of the boss fights, when we're playing through the campaign, as well as the Butcher, those fights are actually pretty fun, because you can feel that if you're familiar with their attack patterns and if you have good enough skills, you can beat the boss by outplay it even if your gears are not that good. But these affixes from elite monsters and Nightmare Dungeons, for some of them there's just nothing you can do. It feels like the game makes you feel that you can do this, you can play it this way. But at the same time, they put something else in the game that completely prevents you from doing that. And I don't really get what's the logic behind this, like why even think this is fun. I said this in my other video and I'm gonna say it again in here. The design is just way too deliberately to limit the things you can do and to make you suffer. There is a difference between making a game challenging and making a game annoying. Making the game as annoying as possible does not equal fun and challenging. Right now, most of the Nightmare Dungeons are just simply annoying and stupid. So those are the main problems that me and my friend discussed. We're not even talking about things like itemization or drop rate or monster scaling. We're not even talking about those in here. We're only talking about the gameplay itself. We just want to have our builds work all the time. We just want to have more monster density so we don't have to run around and look for things to kill. We just want to have fun. We're not even asking much. What we want is actually very basic, and Blizzard can very easily pull that off. But as of right now, once you reach the end game, it's just not fun to keep on playing. I heard Blizzard will buff the monster density when Season 1 comes. I hope they will keep their words. We'll have to see about that. And for the Nightmare Dungeons, or Endgame in general, they got a lot of work to do. It needs a lot more polish. Anyway, let me know what are your thoughts. Feel free to leave a comment. With that being said, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.